You're in the War Room, live from the nation's capital, the historic Breitbart Embassy. It's November 16th, year of our Lord 2020. John Fredericks Radio Network, Real America's Voice, the streaming platform of the Trump Revolution, and they proved it on Saturday. It's Dish Channel 219 or Comcast Channel 113 out in Chicago. Want to wish everybody in Chicago good luck tonight with the Bears versus the Vikings. We're on Newsmax TV, also G News, NG Media in Mandarin, and I think we're the 18th biggest podcast in the country with over 19 million downloads. And we're ubiquitous, free. We want everybody to share it, everybody to let your, make an obligation to share it with 10 people. We guarantee you we will not let you down. We're here to provide information and so that you can remember, you don't discover the future, you make the future. We're here to make sure that we change the arc of history away from the globalists and to the patriots, whether those patriots are part of the diaspora of the Chinese, Lao Beijing, or whether it's deplorables. So you're in the War Room. I want to go now. We got a bunch of topics we got to get through today. And I want to start with Maggie, social media. Is the penalty, because they're deplatforming people like crazy, Conservative Treehouse, and I love Conservative Treehouse. The reason I love Conservative Treehouse, I'm either a hero or a zero. Right, I'm either the greatest populist they ever saw, or I think Bannon worked for the CIA after the Navy. So I think it's a fantastic site. I understand he's been pulled down off of WordPress, right? And I don't know what he did that was so terrible. It's one of the most intense, I think, on the entire landscape. Stonewall Jackson today, after 4 tweets by the commander-in-chief, the chief magistrate, the president of the United States, after 4 retweets in a row, he's pulled down on social media. So for these influencers, which are so important in the ecosystem, what's the status with deplatforming, and what's the status with people taking away their livelihoods like sponsors?
Yeah, so there's kind of a number of attitudes online. It's funny because while people are outraged when they see something happen, like Stonewall Jackson, who's not a fringe voice by any means, who's a mainstream, very popular, not blue checkmark, but a very popular, normal guy who runs a great
is
Twitter.
He throwing out crazy stuff all the time?
No.
White nationalist stuff,
No.
nativist stuff?
No.
Not at all.
No, he reports facts. He finds great news and kind of sums it up in one excellent tweet. He's highly effective and punchy, but he's in no way controversial. At least nothing that I've seen from him.
Until the president starts retweeting him.
Yes, and all of a sudden it seems to me that the approach of Twitter is to just take out anyone who supports the president, who is a fierce defender of the president, and who's highly effective as a conservative voice. And the people also who they can get away with. They probably can't get away with Charlie Kirk, but they can get away with, deleting an account with 324,000 followers.
When you say they can't get away with Charlie Kirk's one of the strongest voices on the right.
With millions of followers.
With millions of followers. But the president's got, 82 million?
And they can censor him.
He's the leader of the free world.
Don't forget the New York Post either.
Yeah.
They took them down.
Yeah.
For 7 days? 8 days?
They were locked out of their account,
Yes.
unable to share. Yeah.
They couldn't
And then they changed the rules, right? They said you have to take this article down. And they refused to do it. And then Jack Dorsey sort of came out and said, well, in further consideration.
Yes. We should not have been censoring that link to that article or preventing people from being able to share it.
So what are they doing with people's livelihoods?
Yeah, so this is unbelievable. I recently ran into a friend of mine who has, I think, the largest conservative Instagram following, 2.2 million followers. His Instagram handle is The Typical Liberal, and he was confiding in me that he is so heavily shadow banned. I think his account engagement is down something like 95%, and all of a sudden he's having his livelihood compromised because he isn't able to reach people in the numbers that he used to be able to reach people. So his advertisers are down, his his sponsorships are down. And this is compromising his life and livelihood. So he's, all of a sudden...
So walk the audience through. How does that work? How do they make it so that he doesn't have the same impact he had before? What do they do technically?
I don't know what it is from a technical side, but from a user side, what happens is all of a sudden his posts don't show up if you follow him. You do not see him when you log on to and you're scrolling through your feed. You just don't see his content. I haven't seen his content for months. I was almost like, where is he? And he's like, nope, I'm posting, 5 to 10 times a day, coming up with great content. But people just aren't seeing it. And it doesn't really matter sort of what you change up. They are censoring him. And what was interesting? This was the craziest thing. I said, well, what kind of happened? And he is so big that he actually has a direct contact at Facebook, which owns Instagram. And so he reached out, and what she said to him was, well, you've posted too many posts which have been flagged by our fact checkers as, that we fact checked as like not reliable sources. But as I asked him, well, what kind of things are they fact checking? He said they fact checked a tweet, which was a quote. And I said that happened to me once as well. And he said,
they fact check a quote.
A quote. Which was a word for word quote, but then they quote. So, things like this, or they flagged him for, reposting a video of Antifa doing something violent. And whenever he was flagged or they said, hey, this goes against our guidelines, he pulled down the video or the post immediately. But now they've deemed him as an unreliable source. So they're suppressing his reach, essentially. So people aren't seeing his content.
They're saying you're an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
Right? That phrase they always use, unreliable narrator.
But what's unbelievable is that this guy is just reposting other things that already exist online for the most part. He's not writing articles. He's not creating fake news. He's just showing people what exists out there or posting funny memes.
Look, the difference between 16 and 20 is that Google and these guys had gone through with artificial intelligence. You can see this on YouTube. You can see this in your Google accounts. And they had started to take out everything of that interconnectivity of that social media universe. That was really the initial backbone of the Trump movement, right? Beginning in the primaries in 2015. And they specifically went through using artificial intelligence and making sure they try to cut the guts of this thing.
And can I also say
Yeah,
one
sure.
other thing? What they've done is they've weaponized these fact checker organizations, which are third-party organizations. Yes. So now all of a sudden the tech companies kind of claim like, well, we aren't reliable, or we're not responsible. We've employed or partnered with these other third-party groups to basically be the fact checker.
Which are all Democratic operatives.
Exactly. And they target people specifically who they want to delegitimize, who they want to take out, essentially. Because all of a sudden, if someone isn't able to make a livelihood doing what they normally do and getting information out there, they're eventually going to stop or have to find some other way of reaching people.
Here's the thing, and Madeline Peltz helped us. I call her our marketing director over at Media Matters. The show is so much bigger. The more they try to suppress War Room, the more people find us, right? It's very much like the information that we put out off the hard drive. Remember, social media, Twitter, and these guys did everything, went out of their way to shut everything down before they pulled their account. But it was just the demand. It was the Streisand effect. The more you try to suppress it, with everything taken out in AI, and now these third-party checkers, and people being deplatformed and having their, being suppressed down so they don't get the revenue, they have sponsorships. Are people, because we can see the basic populace is not losing heart. They're more emboldened and empowered than ever. Are the influencers, and is that connective tissue of the social media activists, are they feeling under the gun to the fact that they're saying, I don't know if this is worth it anymore?
I don't think they're there. I think they're fighting for their platforms. And I'm of the opinion, and a couple other people are of the same opinion, that I don't want to jump to Parler. I don't want to jump to another social media platform and have to rebuild, especially in these social media platforms that kind of feel more like an echo chamber. Everybody already there agrees with me. I believe that conservatives need to fight to stay on the main platforms and to have our voices heard on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. I think that having a secondary account on Parler is great, especially if we need to mobilize large groups of patriots and get the word out. But I think that our voice should be heard, in the public square, so to speak.
What happens if they just start ripping you down? I mean, you've got to have a backup. Parler's got to be a backup, right?
Yeah, that's why I had started a Parler account 2 years ago, never used it until recently. I think I'm already over 15,000 followers or something just in the last couple weeks.
It's funny, you mentioned Orwell in all of this. In his case, it was called the Ministry of Truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked back, and in the Nazi era, it was called the Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. In the USSR, it was called the Soviet Union Department of Agitation and Propaganda. So, yes, fact checkers are nothing new, American people, but be on guard, be vigilant, because the communists never sleep. We are being sold the same bill that our grandparents and great-grandparents were sold. Doing it over again is not going to make it work out better this time.
You got? Can you give us an update on in Pennsylvania, Greg? Particularly that what's going on in Wisconsin? Wisconsin, was there an announcement about this recount?
So for the recount, the Wisconsin officials have said that it will cost the Trump campaign $7.9 million for the recount, and that filing.
If you're in other words, if you're that far out, you have to pay for the recount yourself. Yep. If there was in a certain bandwidth, the state pays for it, or the person or the party that always wants the recount has to pay for it?
The party always has to, and it has to be up front in order for this to happen, and it has to be filed by this Wednesday.
But in this is not we don't have an issue right now, a recount issue. What we have is an illegal ballot issue. Are they an audit issue? Are they going to the best of your knowledge, what's going to happen in Wisconsin?
So to the best of my knowledge and what Jenna Ellis has put out in her statement is they are still looking at all their legal options, which includes the recount and an audit. And obviously the audit would be more targeted, so that is still a way that they can progress in Wisconsin.
So really the most active situations we have are Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan right now. I'm sure Nevada and Arizona are going to get more clarity in the next couple of days. We'll have to see about Wisconsin. One of the shocking things that John Fredericks, absolutely stunning report from John Fredericks in Georgia, and we're going to get into this in the next segment, is that this consent or this deal with Stacey Abrams was not talked about. And you said that there's no public statement, no press release. From the time this thing signed on the 6th, we have the receipts. We got the document. You're saying there was no press release in that time period on this?
Yep, on Governor Kemp's website.
How could that possibly be? You've been in state politics all your life. This is not a small thing.
Something as consequential as this election, and something that gets into granular detail about how it's going to be carried out, and big parties involved, the Senate committees involved, Secretary of State, the governor did not put a public statement out on anything from March 4th to March 9th.
And you have now the state senator in charge of it says he never heard about it, telling John Fredericks. And this came off an incredibly contentious election between Stacey Abrams and Kemp, which she wanted to recount. Remember, she's never conceded. She's never conceded. In fact, she went out after this, and I tipped my hat to her. I said for a long time she's a player. She raised $15 million for a ground game, right? That's what she did coming off of this deal right here.
Yep, ground game, and then even more specifically, voter registration. So new people getting into the system, new signatures, and that is the whole point of making sure that they're all valid.
How can this happen, though, when this is what boggles my mind, knowing that only the state legislatures can change election law by the Constitution? How can you have these executives? And quite frankly, we're going to take a break. In Pennsylvania, how can the Supreme Court, how can Roberts not come down on the side of the state legislatures doing it? It's absolutely stunning. ACB, because this is going to go back up. And Glorious ACB was not part of the first one because she said she didn't hear their oral arguments, right? That's all coming to a head. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return with the War Room team on the afternoon special in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We the people won't concede.
We are not Venezuela, so Biden cannot steal his elections. We are not Venezuela. Get this clear, Democrats. We are not going to allow fraud in our country. Never. Never.
Are you from Venezuela?
Yes.
Wow, and what we see happening, this
It
kind
happened
of...
in Venezuela. Yes, exactly as it happened right now. The count stopped in the middle of 11 p.m. in 2004. 3 in the morning, the government from Maduro announced that he had won the elections when we, the party from the the candidate that was at the time, Capriles, it was the president already. 3 hours after, they announced to the country that we had lost. Find out later on, they used the machines from Dominion too. They stole the election, the machines were tampered. And here where we are right now, Venezuela. I mean, you don't want a life in Venezuela. We want our freedom. We want our kids. We want our kids to have the freedom and the right to a correct life and education and health insurance. Venezuela now has nothing because Maduro took over. How? He stole the elections with the Dominion machines. We can't allow this to happen in the United States. We own this to our kids. We own this to our generations. We need to stop that right now. If we don't do it, we lost our nation. We can't allow this to happen. No other watch. We just can't. Stand out there. It's not about who you belong to. It's not about Democrats. It's not about Republicans. It's about being an American citizen and fight for our rights, for art and for our kids.
That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is what scares the globalist, neoliberal, neocon establishment to the marrow of their bones. That right there is the thing itself, right? That's raw truth. This is what's so powerful. Jack, you've said this for a while. It's those people, these are the pathfinders in what's enlightening the Great Awakening. This Great Awakening is self-organizing. You know what scared the establishment on Saturday? You didn't need Donald Trump. You didn't need Donald Trump to come down in the beast. The love for Trump, the support for Trump, and the absolute steely resolve is that we're closing on this victory. There's no option. We're not going to say, "Oh, he was great and helped the House race," or Laura Ingraham he did some fantastic. No. The steely resolve that this victory must be closed, and nobody's going to back off. But what's shocked them to the marrow of their bones is that where they see the average person who is a teller of truth, a witness, right? Like Whittaker Chambers, this is a witness to communism. This is a witness to cultural Marxism. This is a witness to the power, the will to power of our opponents. And this is what's driving the Great Awakening, right? This is what you saw in the 96-mile caravan in Arizona. This is what you saw in Butler, Pennsylvania, the 54,000 people. This is what you saw in South Florida. This is why they don't want to talk about the 47% of the Hispanics that are coming out to Trump's cause. This is why the Reagan Revolution was about Eastern Europe, right? There's so many people from Eastern Europe, the captive nations. There's a whole new generation. Lao Beijing, the diaspora of China, the communism in the Caribbean and Cuba and in Latin America. What's happened in sub-Saharan Africa, what's happening in other parts of the world. That's all coming out here. And that's all the underpinnings of this Great Awakening. And they can't stop it. There's no one leader they can go after. It's self-organizing. And it's done in a way that is quite unique, even in American history, because it's steely resolve, and the anger is solidified in something that's positive, and it's building every day.
It's very similar to the Great Awakening that we saw in the 1820s, 30s in the United States, where we saw people have a renewed interest in faith and spirituality. And what was the end result of that? The end result was that the average American recognized inside themselves that they could no longer hypocrisy of slavery in the context of our Constitution and in the context of our founding documents. And I think right now, Steve, we're seeing another great awakening where people are beginning to realize the value of these Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Today, everybody is getting a civics lesson in what it means to be a responsible citizen. You hear these veterans over and over again reference the fact that they took an oath to the Constitution. And here we're talking about social media, and we're discussing this, what we declare as a violation of our First Amendment rights. We talk about the election, and we're discussing things like the violation of equal protection enshrined in the 14th Amendment, which came out of the Civil War as a second attempt to guarantee the rights of freed African American citizens because they were still being denied in some parts. And it took us 100 years to get ahead of that. But what you're seeing right now is people defending their constitutional rights. And there's something beautiful about that because it enables us to see beyond the situation. Just like this is bigger than Donald Trump, what is happening today is bigger than even our movement. It is an acknowledgement that this is a nation of laws, and it is built upon probably the finest document ever created. I recommend everybody go out and read it. It should take you about 45 minutes to read the entire Constitution. It will change your life if you have not read it, because when you know what your rights are, you will know to defend them.
Yeah, and the powerful thing, I think this is one of the great things the Tea Party movement did. Remember that the original documents had kind of not been forgotten, but they had been not put up as front and center of the American experience today, the modern American experience. One of the powers of the Tea Party movement was it brought the Declaration, it brought the Federalist Papers, it brought the Constitution. Mark Levin, I mean, people that started then teaching the Constitution, people understood it. And a little bit, that I'm not saying it faded, but it kind of took back. And now you see it come in a second wave where people are very focused on the documents and very focused. One of the great things about doing the shows with the Chinese is how much they revere these documents. The power of the Declaration, the power of the Constitution. When you see people that have never had freedom before, and this thing about inalienable rights and rights that come from God, that no state actor can give those rights to you, and they cannot take them away, because those rights come directly from God to you. And it's you talk to the Chinese in the diaspora, it's so powerful what these documents mean, and that's why they need to be defended, right? And that's why, look, a lot of people are going to sit there and say about Trump, well, he did great things, and this movement's going to go. No. This is about the Constitution directly linked to an individual. That's why we cannot back off. Anything less than a victory where he is inaugurated at noon on the 20th of January 2021 will do irreparable harm to our nation. In fact, you will be able to say we were a constitutional republic beforehand and something else on the other side of it. That's how important this is. You cannot back off. And particularly, we cannot let them steal it the way they're trying to steal it. This is just in your face, a pure power move.
I'm pleased, though, to see that all of these people who are out in the streets, I would call them happy warriors, and the fact that so many people were not downtrodden, non desperandum, as we learned from, Patrick Henry. So the one thing that I think is very key that everyone has to understand, we hear all this talk about, Civil War and all this craziness, as we go through this Constitution of ours, the First Amendment protects our rights to free speech. It protects our right to assemble peaceably. It protects our rights to worship as we please. And the Second Amendment is a guarantor of those rights. And it's very serious. It's not something that should be taken lightly. And it shows you what a razor's edge we are on as a nation. And I applaud the deplorables. I applaud the Trump supporters for keeping it so civil, because we as a nation have spent the last 7 months watching black-clad progressive terrorists take to the streets and burn and vandalize our country. And I thank you, American patriots, for standing your ground, but doing it with grace.
I was out at the march, and something that really struck me was there was chants of USA, 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 and the singing of the national anthem. There was definitely Trump, Trump, Trump chants, but definitely more USA, USA, USA.
Here's the thing about it, is that you say, and this is the steely resolve versus the anger. And people said, we're on the edge of civil war, edge of civil war. The people on Saturday know they're winning. It's the confidence that comes. Victory begets victory. They know they won in a sweeping victory. They know they won in the House. They know they won in the Senate. They know they win at the state legislatures. Not only is their cause righteous, it is being embraced by more and more and more people. It's not a nativist movement. It's not a white nationalist movement. It's none of that. And this is why the media was so petrified. They didn't want to cover any of it. The scale of it shocked them.
The joy of it,
The
too.
joy of it shocked them. It's the joy of victory. You know you're on the right side of history that makes sure you understand you're in a historical moment, and it gives you joy.
Yeah, they can't show the event. They can't show the joy because then it would disprove their narrative that it's a bunch of hateful people out there, being, crazy. But, it also goes to show that they know that we're winning because that's why they attack. That's why they came out after dark.
We're going to come back. We got Michael Matt that's going to join us. Soros, Logos, Davos, next.
Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
So we've got Candace Owens. She's jumping into even more heat than she normally has. What do you got for us, Fog City?
This morning when I woke up and hopped on Twitter, I noticed, why is Candace Owens trending? And it's all because she wrote a tweet with an image of this guy wearing a dress. I don't even really know who Harry Styles is, but he's in Vogue magazine.
You don't know who Harry Styles is?
I don't. Who is this man?
I thought you were from San Francisco. You're supposed to be cutting edge of style, music, entertainment.
I'm like a political person now. I try to not pay attention to Hollywood, but this guy's in Vogue magazine wearing
I think the first time,
a number of dresses.
Isn't he on the cover? I think it's the first time in 157 years or something of Vogue, or there's some amazing number. I think he's on the cover. Harry Styles is an entertainer, musician, very well known.
Well, he doesn't look very good in these dresses. So he's modeling a number of what appear to be women's attire. And Candace Owens tweeted these pictures with the comment, "There is no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this. In the West, the steady feminization of our men at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children is not a coincidence. It is an outright attack. Bring back manly men." So this tweet just lit Twitter on fire, and everyone had to chime in. So she was getting tweeted at by, all kinds of celebrities, all kinds of leftists, all kinds of journalists, and has just been completely under attack for the last day and a half because of this. But it's actually gotten her some kind of like good publicity, because a lot of people are also saying, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying that? And I have to say, I agree. I think that, our society today tends to not value masculinity in the way that it should, because, having strong men makes our country strong.
How on fire was this with Kansas this morning?
Oh, she's been back and forth. She's been retweeting with comment a number of the tweets from other people.
I know she loves it. She's a fighter. She came down to the wall. She was fantastic. I mean,
yes.
She is absolutely a flat out warrior. She just likes throwing down for the fun of throwing down.
Yes. She's a great warrior, and I admire her so much. But, we've got Elijah Wood tweeting, "I think you missed the definition of what a man is. Masculinity alone does not make a man." And so she wrote, "Don't tempt me, Frodo."
She's on fire.
Yeah.
Let's go back to these. I want to go back to the documents now. This thing in Georgia, in Dominion Systems, we're going to be getting a lot more into this. This thing stinks to high heaven. And by the way, how they got the contracts, who got the kickbacks, who got paid off, what lobbyists got paid off, this whole thing around this software system, this computer system. We've already had massive mistakes in Michigan. Got another one right out of the box in Georgia. This thing stinks to high heaven. And Jack, you're the one that brought it up. You know who knew this before the right did? Democrats in the Democratic primary.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, let's start a little bit earlier. We'll get to Georgia, but I want to start with a December 6th, 2019 series of letters that were sent out by then vice presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren and presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar, and they were joined in their requests by Ron Wyden and Mark Pocan in the Congress. And it's a request to three separate private equity companies who control essentially the electronic voting in the United States. The one that was of most interest to them was Staple Street Capital Group, LLC, in New York City. And we are writing to request information regarding Staple Street Capital Group, LLC's investment in Dominion voting systems. We are particularly concerned that secretive and trouble-plagued companies owned by private equity firms and responsible for manufacturing and maintaining voting machines and other election administration equipment have long skimped on security. This goes on and on and on. Today, three large vendors, Election Systems and Software, Dominion, and Hart Intercivic, collectively provide voting machines and software that facilitate over 90% of all eligible voters. In fact, the Election Assistance Commission has warned election officials that, quote, if you do not manage the vendors, the vendors will manage you. These are all very troubling things, and then they follow up with a request dating back, I believe, from the beginning of time, essentially. Every single interaction that these three private equity companies have had with any voting companies, and also they request any information about violations of rules, regulations, etc.
So, to contextualize this, whose name's not on there? Joe Biden. Who are they talking to? Private equity. The neoliberal Wall Street guys, the Democratic apparatus, right? Klobuchar and these people realized that they were going to get crushed, right, by this voting system that could do what Joe Biden and his colleagues wanted to do, and so they wanted to throw up a warning shot, right?
Well, yeah, I believe that Amy Klobuchar and Warren knew that there was something up with these companies. They saw what had happened in 2016. Nobody could explain. Bernie Sanders lost both times around. Nobody could explain how the anointed candidates of the DNC somehow won the nomination. This didn't happen with Donald Trump and the other anointed candidates of the RNC. It's only happened with the Democrats, and it's happened now multiple times. So my guess, Steve, is that someone like Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar were trying to cover their sixes going into the primaries.
They're covering the sixes. Here's what I don't understand. Ron Wyden and Klobuchar and Pocahontas will run into Rachel Maddow at the drop of a hat. Why are we not having why are they not having the big stories on Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes? Why are they every night? Lawrence O'Donnell, he's supposed to be the conscience of all this. Why are they not up there talking about this in December of 2019? By the way, just in the same day that, guess what? The hard drive from hell showed up at the FBI that never got brought forward. Okay? The fix was in. There's no conspiracy, but there's no coincidences. Right there, they knew that going in against the neoliberal neocon candidate, the hand-picked candidate of the neoliberals neocon, just like Hillary Clinton, they weren't going to get a fair shot because the private equity, Jack Maxey, he's got the receipts.
Well, here's something also to think about. They asked a series of very detailed questions concerning the operations of these voting companies to these three separate private equity companies. Now, we have the letter requesting that information, but why hasn't some enterprising reporter over at the Washington Post or someone followed up to find out what the answers were? And if the answers were something that weren't so great, what did Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Ron Wyden do with this information? This is a year ago, people.
Of course they're not going to do that because that breaks off the narrative. Okay, I want to go then following your thing about the state. This thing in Georgia, ladies and gentlemen, John Fredericks breaking the day. Lynn Wood's all over this. This stinks to high heaven. And this gets to the rot of the system, not just with the Democrats, because it's a Republican administration down there. They're going to find out who got paid, how they got paid, who got the kickbacks. What is this system doing in Georgia? What do you got there for us on the Stacey Abrams of it?
Well, this is a compromise settlement agreement and release that was filed in March 6th of 2020. It is between the Democrat Party of Georgia, Inc., the DSCC, DCC, collectively the political party committees, versus Brad Raffensperger et al., being the state. Now, what happened was
Raffensperger is the guy that's calling out the president right now.
Right. He's the Secretary of State. We have other words for him, but we won't go there. Now, so essentially the Democratic Party of Georgia sues the Secretary of State, saying that the requirements on the signatures and everything, it's an absentee ballot signature matching procedure, notification process when an absent ballot is rejected for any reason, procedure for curing a rejected absentee ballot. They all claim that this violated the First and 14th Amendment to the United States, and they're suing the state of Georgia. This is because of all the hanky-panky in the prior elections, right? So this is a little sleight of hand on their part to bring a suit essentially claiming that the things that they did illegally prior were because they were really defending the First and the 14th Amendment. So essentially what comes out of this is a compromise settlement agreement where they all agree to the procedures. Now, from what I can gather, none of the procedures were followed in the secondary in this election. For example, Secretary of State Raffensperger, in his official capacity as Secretary of State, agrees to issue an official election bulletin containing the following procedures. County registrars, absentee ballot clerks are required upon receipt of each mail-in absentee ballot to compare the signature or mark of the elector on the mail-in absentee ballot envelope with the signature or marks in ENET or on the application. Then he goes through 3 levels of comparative verification, right? The opposition, the leader of the counts. None of this occurred. None of it. And this agreement was entered into on March 6th of this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge, huge problem. Let's also remember that they just signed an agreement with 2017 that the state of Georgia signed on with Dominion voting. And it was, I believe, over $100 million. Now, one of the things that has also been discussed around this whole situation with Dominion specifically, and it came up in the Secretary of State in Texas's denial of their use, they use old software. For example, they use in many of these places around the country, it's not just Dominion, they're using Microsoft 7, Microsoft 6. These things are not even supported anymore. In fact, they had to get the agreement of Microsoft to continue to support specifically their needs for 7. Now, 7 isn't used because it's not secure. It doesn't meet the security standards of the current internet environment. But all of our voting is being run on what you would not use for your desktop? This is insanity, Steve.
What Lynn Wood is saying, what he said on the John Fredericks Radio Network, he believes that the entire election in Georgia, except for the presidential election, is going to have to be done over, right? Because you've had a major violation, a constitutional violation, that, and John Fredericks had a state senator on today, one of the leaders in the Georgia State Senate, says he didn't know anything about this. This is what's so shocking to me, that a deal that's this detailed and at this level, you have, it's not, the state legislature doesn't know about it at all, or claiming they don't know about it. Then you have the whole secret deal. Nobody fully understands this Dominion deal. Nobody understands that the chief lobbyist for it is Kemp's old guy, and Kemp was former Secretary of State.
Yeah, and it's completely unacceptable that the people that were up for re-election did not know this was happening.
It's incredible. This thing in Georgia, I'm telling you, it's going to explode. Okay, how do we get? I want to make sure everybody's got access to the show. We're back up on YouTube. Make sure you go to americasvoice.news is the website you go to get us. We're everywhere. Go to the podcast. We would love you to download the podcast. Also, leave reviews. We want reviews over hashtag War and Pandemic, the live stream. We like all your comments, observations, and you send us great stuff, so we use that.
One thing also of note in this agreement between the Democratic Party of Georgia and the Secretary of State et al. Is that they were represented by Perkins Coie right here in Washington, D.C. Gosh, these same names just keep coming
Perkins
up
Coie
again.
is the lawfare. I mean, this is the whole plan. Remember, we started talking about this and going around the nation giving the talk, our little TED Talk, on the plot to steal 2020. This is all it was about. Perkins Coie is one of the stars, right? That's, was it Mark Elias and the group of Bannon? Oh, and of course Bauer, right? Who's, I think,
Mark Elias was a party to the suit.
Yeah, Mark Elias, but Bauer, I think the other senior partner there's kind of maybe emeritus now. He's the chief chairman of the lawfare group. Right, he was one of the first ones to call it for Joe Biden. Remember, I think his dad was locked up by Roy Cohen in the HUAC hearings. Be back in a moment.
Scare the nation with fabrication.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're honored to be joined now by the one of the leaders of the Remnant Army from the Remnant newspaper, which is 150 years of editorial excellence that his family has had an unbroken chain in. Michael Matt. Michael, first off, your story, your analysis was great, but as I told the posse this morning, it had the greatest headline I've ever seen. What is it? It's Logos, Soros, Davos. Is that the order of it? What's
that's it. Trumping Biden. Yeah. Soros, Davos, and the Logos.
So walk us through the Logos, Soros, and the Davos. How do they interconnect, and how do they relate to Trump?
Well, I just think that this conspiracy is unfolding now, and everybody can see it. It used to be sort of it was a conspiracy theory, but I don't know if you've noticed, I think it was yesterday, Justin Trudeau up in Canada came right out and said that this whole thing is all about, the Great Reset, the Green Reset, the transhumanism, whatever they got in mind, it's all coming. And my point was that, as long as we don't turn to the Logos at some point, what's going on in Davos, what's going on with George Soros and all of his machinations, it's going to be pretty tough to regulate. So we're playing with this idea that ultimately what Trump did is he helped unite 100 million Christian patriot, lots of them who are not Christian, against this whole idea, against the New World Order, the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's just going to be kind of exciting. Whatever happens here, I know you're confident still, and I'm glad that you are. But whatever happens, I don't see Trump going away, and I see Trump, I think, leading a very interesting populist movement like the world has never seen. You can tell me, have we ever seen a president, an ex-president, in a potential situation now to lead a populist movement like this? I'm trying to keep our people up. This is not going to be the end, even if he does lose this election through cheating, obviously. There's a massive potential, and I think it's time we really get people fired up for that. Of course, a lot of people are.
I want to go back. What do you mean for our audience, and maybe particularly some of the people that are secular? What do you mean by Logos? How does Logos fit into the issues of Soros and the issues of Davos?
Well, it just seems to me that the Word of God, Logos, Christ himself, the kingship of Christ, all of these things presented a real impasse to this effort now to take over the world in a completely new way, even including using things like transhumanism, using computers, to completely evolve the human idea, or the idea of what it is to be a human being. I think that's right now they had to find a way, and they've been at this for a long time, and you know this. They had to find a way to remove Christianity as a force. So take, for example, the Catholic Church. I think the sex scandal, the rushing of certain canonizations that's been happening over the past 20 years was all a setup to try to undermine the moral authority of the Logos, of his church, his mystical body here on earth, in order to have much less competition for whatever this thing is that they have in mind for us. And so, I think that this has been such a long time coming, as you know. I mean, it's not just Donald Trump. It's so much bigger than Donald Trump. It's so much bigger than Pope Francis or George Soros or Davos or Klaus Schwab. So much bigger. And if we start seeing the bigger picture here, I think two things happen. We realize that this has been going on a long time, and we also realize that the end result is going to be something that nobody expects, because the forces that we're up against are very much non-believers in this idea. They knew the church Christianity had a power that had to be reckoned with, but they don't believe in the power, the spiritual power of that. And I believe ultimately that's going to triumph, and that should be for your viewers, my viewers, a real encouragement. We're not going to lose this thing in the end. Absolutely not. There's no way. But we have to sort of include the Logos. We have to include Christ, the Word of God, in our efforts to fight. And on a political sphere and moral, spiritual sphere, we have to not forget that at the end of the day, this is also a spiritual battle. It's exactly what we're in the middle of right now.
I want to go back quickly to your concept of transhumanism. This is what I was saying this morning, is that this convergence, when we look at what Klaus Schwab and the Davos guys talk about, the fourth industrial revolution and this convergence of robotics, artificial intelligence, and advanced microchip design, right? one element they downplay. They talk about it, but they downplay it, is the aspect of genetic engineering and biotechnology, because they're hurtling towards, and this is not some conspiracy, this is not tinfoil hat. They talk about this all the time, this concept of the singularity, this concept of, when you hit, when they've actually got this issue of transhumanism, where you're on the other side of what Homo sapiens are. And this will be the biggest divide in mankind's history, for the last 2,000 years since the coming of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Walk through what transhumanism is and how important a concept it is to the Davos crowd.
Well, I think a way of sort of explaining what people should be looking out for right now is the reluctance that we've actually seen. Everyone is talking about something that I think was set up by the people, and that's the fear of vaccination. So we're all talking about vaccinations. We all understand they want to vaccinate the world and all of that. But in my opinion, that actually isn't the end game. It's not vaccinations. They're trying to buy time. In fact, when Trump warp-sped the vaccination, there were a lot of people that thought, well, he's just one of them. And that's, in my opinion, what he was trying to do with the warp speed of the vaccination was to try to subvert this thing or overcome this metric that they have in place, that we have to, because what they want to do, they don't want to fix it. They don't want a therapeutic for COVID. They don't want to have a quick or a premature vaccination, because they have this idea of transhumanism. They have this idea of computers sort of redefining what we are. So when they talk about, for example, Bill and Melinda Gates, when they talk about remote learning, I don't think they're talking about going back to the classroom ultimately as being what they're striving for. I think they want us to be interfacing with our computers in a lot of ways, including in education, for a long, long time. Remote learning, remote working from on the computer, really taking our life and putting it into the hands of the computer system, and therefore becoming a little something than what we've ever been in the past. And that's, I think, what people really need to realize. They're not going back to an old normal. They have no intention of going back post-COVID. That's why they're using COVID to create a whole new understanding of what the world is and even what human beings are, and our dependence on computer systems is also what they have in mind. And this has been a long, long time coming. As we become more and more dependent on these machines, there could be a future, and these guys believe there will be a future. We will literally be absolutely dependent on computers for everything, from buying food to traveling to education to work. It's a revolution, Steve, and they're not making any bones about this. It's not a conspiracy theory. Klaus Schwab, Soros and company have been admitting it over and over again.
Michael, we got to bounce. We're going to get all your links up on the Remnant. People can get to you, one of the deepest and most profound and important thinkers out there today. Honored to have you on the show again. Michael Matt of the
Thanks very much, Steve. It was a pleasure to be here.
Of the Remnant newspaper, one of the leaders of the Remnant Army. Okay, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we're going to have the numbers, we're going to have the stats, we're going to have the legal, all of it's exploding. Next couple of weeks, some of the most important in American history. See you tomorrow at 10.